Hello there, sword friends. Today I'm going to talk about something a little different, and that is some Budo gear. Now, if you don't study Japanese-style swordsmanship, if you don't do kendo, if you don't do any kind of official martial art, it doesn't really matter. This stuff might be interesting to you in the sense that I'm going to talk about sword bags, and it's not something that's often covered, but if you go about town, if you travel with your swords, then it might be interesting to you anyway. So if that's of interest, stick around. I'm going to talk about a Ghee top and some sword bags that were sent to me from Urufu. So hopefully I'm saying the name correctly. Special thanks to them for sending this stuff my way. The basic gist is I have a Ghee top, I have two sword bags, and I've used them for a couple months now, and I can tell you about my experiences. But before I do, some context. One, these are for your review samples. If you think that makes me biased, you know at the start. Two, I do study Japanese-style swordsmanship. I'm not an expert on it. I've done it for a long time, but it doesn't really make me an expert. But I do put clothes on every day, and I do go to class every week. I travel a lot with swords. I ship them a reasonable amount, and hopefully the feedback I have is useful. Anyway, that's the stuff that you want to keep in mind, as well as the pricing on these. So link in the description down below as well, but basically the Ghee top is €65. The light bag that holds two swords and a jo is €90, and the larger bag, the Budo bag, is €100, and it holds 4 swords. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about the Ghee, I'm going to talk about the light bag, then the Budo bag. Hopefully you find this stuff interesting. So the Ghee top. First, it's made out of a stretchy material, and I don't really know what it is, but it wicks moisture off your skin, and it doesn't feel like you're wearing a garbage bag, despite it having kind of a somewhat plasticky feel. Normally, I wear a cotton Ghee top, and if you watch my content for any length of time, you've seen me swinging swords around in my pajamas in the backyard, and basically, I wear a cotton Ghee top all the time. And I bought these Ghee tops when I was a smaller man. I've expanded since then, so they are a little bit snug on me anyway. Often I wear them without an undershirt in the summer. If I'm practicing outside and inside in the winter, I'll wear them with an undershirt or sometimes a sweater. And so what I find with these is on my bare skin, the cotton feels a little bit more familiar, but the cotton is also a little bit tighter. And as time has progressed, I find that it grabs my flub or grabs the pit hair and snags in some places, but it's not uncomfortable. My complaints with it, though, are that it does hold me up a little bit. It doesn't stretch necessarily where it needs to because it's a pretty thick cotton material. It doesn't chafe or cause any problems, but after every use, it does need to be washed, and over time it has faded. Well, it faded, frankly, pretty quickly the way I sweat and how I wash them, which is harshly and stupidly. Anyway, the Urufu piece has gone through the same gist. Anyway, the same abuse that I put the cotton stuff through. And what I can tell you about it is that the material on bare skin feels unfamiliar is maybe the best word I can think of. It's not uncomfortable. It's not like wearing a trash bag or a wool sweater. It's not itchy, but the material does feel different than cotton on the bare skin. It pulls moisture away, so in summer it's cooling, but if you're in a hotter environment or a cooler environment, then you can also lose some of the heat that you might appreciate with cotton, which is the case when you live in a spot that's winter for 10 months a year. But with an undershirt, it's just fine. It wicks some stuff away, though it does some odd stuff with the heat and maybe feels a little bit hotter than you'd expect it to when you're wearing an undershirt. What I do like about it, though, is that it doesn't bind. And so, as I noted, the errant snare of a pit hair seems to happen from time to time in my other uniform. This is very liberating and free to move around in. It doesn't bind, it stretches, it moves with you very easily. Now, if you're doing any kind of grappling, it's not going to be the stuff for you, though typically that isn't what you're trying to do in Kinjitsu when you have a 4-foot razor blade. The basic gist is, though, that it's very easy to move around, very easy to put your shoulders above your head if you go to Jodan. In some cases, my Ghee can be kind of tight. It stretches so it doesn't untuck itself from my obi, from the hakama, from the pants part of my pajama uniform. Anyway, it moves around very easily. It's easy to put on. It's very stretchy, but it's also pretty resilient. In the last couple months, I've thrown it in the wash, washed it on just about any kind of anything, and it still looks brand new. I wash it after each use, so it's at least gone through the laundry, well, 8 to 12 times. Well, probably more than that because I sweat in it quite a bit. But also, I've had some cases where boken have been draped across me that needed to be sanded, and little bits of crap have gotten stuck in them, and it hasn't ripped or torn. Now, typically that's not the case with cotton either. The little slivers and whatnot sometimes will go in, and I can brush them off. With this kind of microfiber-ish material, I was kind of thinking that it might fray or deform in some way, but it seems to be overall pretty durable. And apart from a few errant frays, which I could also spot with cotton, I haven't really had any problem with it. And overall, it's reasonably comfortable. It does look a little bit more modern, so my cotton hakama pants that are in my uniform as well don't necessarily blend the same black. This looks newer and has a crisper, darker black to it than my Hakama. But honestly, it blends in. It's comfortable to use around, and you've seen me since I got it use it almost exclusively in the content that I'm making because it's the most comfortable Ghee top that I own. It's easy to put on. It fits over a sweater. It fits over my bare skin. Any way I want to use it, it's ready to go for me, and I find it to be the best one that I own. If I were looking for specifically the cotton feel, or if I was wearing a particular undershirt, there are times where I may prefer a cotton Ghee, but it's going to be pretty few and far between. Generally speaking, this is more comfortable, easier to use, and it has one other feature that I haven't noted right now, and that is that I am notorious for not folding my stuff up. When class ends, I am usually in a rush to get out of there and get to my family so that I can, well, do some daddy duty related stuff. And doing the very elaborate little folds that people often do to their Japanese gear, their Ghee tops and their Hakamas, I tend to roll them up and throw them in a bag and get out, and hopefully remember to do it when I get home, but often I take it out and leave it in the laundry. In this case, that hasn't necessarily happened. I've washed it after each use, but maybe not right away, and it's sat in a pile on the floor. Sometimes after it's washed, it sits in a pile on the floor, not folded, and it looks fantastic. There's not the "you're a dirty slob" creases all over the place, which are typically in the Ghee tops that I have, because I don't often iron them, and often I don't fold them either, and so I look a little disheveled when I go into class. But this is a very pristine looking piece and almost inspires me to fold my Hakama properly. Anyway, it's a fantastic Ghee. It gets a recommendation from me. The only notes that I would have about it is that the material does feel a little weird on bare skin, but all of that is not really applicable if you're wearing an undershirt of any kind. And honestly, different is what I'd focus on. It's not itchy, it's not bad, but it does feel different than cotton. Not as pleasant, but also not bad. Now I'm going to talk about the sword bags, and this is a little bit more in my wheelhouse. And while I haven't reviewed a sword bag before, I can tell you that often I'm bringing 4 of them, and I look like a Sherpa when I go in. I have my Ghee and uniform and shoes and stuff like that in one. I have cameras sometimes in the same bag or another bag, and then I might have 4 sword bags draped over my shoulder where I look like some sort of vagrant that's wandering in the place rather than a student there. And the basic gist is this really consolidates things. I study 2 different styles of swordsmanship, and they have 2 different requirements. And one is Katori, where I typically bring my Yaito, and then my Bokin, which does most of the work. So the light bag really works well. I don't use a Jo, so the extra feature of a Jo isn't something that I used, but it looks kind of cool in how it fits in there. If you don't use a Jo, it tucks away pretty easily. That's what I did, and it looked the part, and I didn't even notice that extra little feature was there. But I can put my Yaito, I can put my Bokin in there. They fit in really easy. The only critique that I'd have is that they can knock together depending on how you put them in there, and if you don't use some sort of cover for your Suba, your Bokin can get rattled around a little bit and it can scratch some stuff. If you put them really close together and don't secure them in such a way where the Subas touch, then you'll have that. And if there were some extra little liner, some sort of Suba cover, some sort of padding that you could drape over your Suba, that would be the only enhancement that I could think of having made to these pieces, because the Subas would sometimes touch the Bokin or other swords, and there's an opportunity to scratch stuff there depending on how many swords you put in there. But I maxed them out very often. So the light bag anyway, I've got my Yaito, I've got my Bokin in there. They're easy to secure, they're easy to take in and out. There's lots of little pockets in there, so when I get to class, if I want to take my wallet, my phone, and that kind of stuff and put it in the outside or inside bag, I can. I like that versatility is there, as well as a cleaning kit. You can kind of put that stuff in there if you want to take any extra cleaning stuff. On the front of the bag, it's got a nice industrial zipper. It feels really solid in terms of overall construction. It doesn't feel cheap, like I'm going to pull on it and it's going to rattle apart, which some of my sword bags frankly have, and I have to unzip them by pushing the zipper down with my finger because the zipper has the zip part, the tab has broken off. Anyway, these feel pretty solid overall, and the front side has a pocket as well as a spot to basically put like your name or some sort of card on there if you lose it and whatnot. Anyway, the internal material is also really nice. It's made out of the same type of stuff as the Ghee. It has this kind of porous feeling, and there's some padding in there as well that keeps your sword safe if they're rattling around in your trunk, for example, which mine do. As I go to class, I put them in my trunk. They bounce around as I drive with some tools and other bits back there, and I haven't seen scratches apart from, again, some little bits that I've noticed on the bokin, which are from the Suba, but I've shipped them in my trunk with tools on top of them, with jumper cables and other stuff bouncing around, with groceries sometimes, and I haven't noticed any scratches, any dings, any pings. The padding on there is sufficient, not so thick that it makes the bag cumbersome to carry around, but thick enough that it does the job appropriately. And from a supply chain perspective, from a shipping perspective, I really appreciate that there's a way to secure it. It's not overdone, it's reusable, and holds up really, really quite well. Anyway, that's the small bag. It's €90. If all you're carrying are 2 pieces and maybe a Joe, then it works pretty well for that kind of thing. The Toyama class that I take usually needs a little bit more. Now, sometimes there's bokin stuff, so I bring a bokin, but there's not a lot of bokin contacts, so I bring a fancier bokin that I'm not as worried about getting dinged up, that's made of a harder wood. As well as that, I often bring an Iaito or 2, depending on my elbow. Sometimes I bring a lighter and a heavier one, where I try to use the heavier, and then I can go back to the lighter one if I want. And then I often bring a Shenken or 2. So sometimes I bring a bokin, an Iaito, and then 2 different swords depending on what I'm testing, though not often. In the last case, though, I did bring 2 Shenken to class, and so in this case I can bring 4 swords, which is really nice. I've walked in with 4 sword bags in the past to my Toyama class, and it's nice to have them all in one bag. Now, this also has a variety of pockets as well, the same as the light bag, but more. You can put credit cards and your phone and a cleaning kit and more stuff. There's a lot of different things that you can put in there. I haven't found that it's very easy to store my Budo gear. Like, I still need to bring a bag to carry my clothes. If there was a super XL Budo bag where you could put your Hakama and your Ghee top and all of that kind of stuff in there as well, that'd be nice. This one is also long enough to put a Joe in if that's what you carry, but I like that I could bring 4 swords to class. That is a thing I do. I max the bag out when I bring it. Anyway, overall, it held up really well. The swords, again, the only complaint that I'd have is that there is opportunity for the Subas to bang and rattle together. I didn't have it necessarily as a huge problem, but at the same time, if there were, since it's got everything else, if there was some way to cover the Suba so that they didn't bang or touch each other, that would be the only enhancement thing that I could think of. But again, same material, really well made, no dings in the saya, nothing like that, easy to take in and out, easy to splay out and see what you're doing, made of overall really solid materials. The larger Budo bag, it's easy enough and I could change it. The shoulder strap was below where you would adjust the size, so the only critique that I'd have on that side of things, which I think I can take off and put on a different spot, but the shoulder strap that rests on your shoulder was below where I would need it, and I had to move it around. But anyway, apart from that, overall really well made. The only other cautionary thing that I would note is the bottom of the bags has a slightly different material on it. It's got some sort of waterproofing kind of substance on it. I'm not sure what it is, but it has kind of a rubbery feel to it, and I have put them upside down and had that fall and put a streak on my wall. So I could wipe it off. It came off really easy, but do know that it could streak if you if you rub it against your walls. So I don't encourage rubbing the bottom of the bag against your walls. So you heard it here first. Anyway, overall, these are great. I intend to continue using them. They've been very durable, and again, I've tried to put them through their paces. I've tossed them in my trunk. I've been somewhat careless with them. I put swords in kind of haphazardly, and overall, apart from the minor bits of Suba rub on the sword next to them, or the bokin next to them, which I've tried to stagger, so I haven't had Suba on Suba, but I've had Suba, bokin, sword, and then Iaito, which is so dinged up I wouldn't notice more scratches. But the basic gist is there can be some play there. You might want to plan on wrapping them in some other way, or having an additional silk sword bag or something like that would mitigate the problem. But the basic gist is these are fantastic bags. I plan on continuing to use them. They're really overall a joy. I like that they are made for both styles of martial art that I use. So I have one sword bag ready to go for Katori, one sword bag ready to go for Toyama. They're just overall really, really solidly made. They get a recommendation from me, and it's not the least expensive thing out there, but it's really not the most expensive sword bag out there either. I see other sword bags in the dojo that cost as much or more and don't have anywhere near as much protection, padding, and offer many of the same problems with very few of the same benefits. These are very ergonomic, very well thought out, and again, they get a thumbs up from me. Anyway, hopefully this video has been useful. I know it's a little bit different. Special thanks to Urufu for sending these my way. I really enjoyed using them. I intend to keep using them. And that's all I got. Cheers, and thanks for watching.